Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Minister, welcome to the Senate of Canada. Minister, based on your new defence policy released in April, military spending will reach $58 billion by 2029-30. This will be 1.58% of GDP, well below the NATO target of 2%. Last July, just 3 months later, your government said it would reach NATO's military spending target of 2% by 2032. But to reach the 2% by 2032, the Parliamentary Budget Officer says this would require defence expenditures to increase from $58 billion to $82 billion by 2032. That's a very significant increase of $24 billion, or 40% over 3 years. It's simply not credible. You have yet to release figures detailing how you will increase your spending to achieve the 2% target. My question is, when will you release the details as to how you are going to reach the military spending of $82 billion in 2032 to reach the 2% target?
Minister Blair.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, Senator, for this. And I believe this is a very important question, and a question that I have taken up in some detail with our colleagues among the NATO defense ministers. First of all, if I may provide a little clarity, and I'm grateful for the work of the Parliamentary Budget Officer, and I think he does exceptional work on all of our behalf. And at the same time, as I have pointed out to him, Canada committed to reaching 2% of the NATO target. And to be very clear, this is a spending metric. It doesn't talk about the why or the how or the what that we have to do in order to achieve it. It only tells us how much. But the NATO target that frankly, in 2013, then Prime Minister Harper committed to in Wales was to reach 2% of the NATO target as defined by NATO. And in that definition, that they've applied to all now 32 members of NATO is a calculation of GDP based on the OECD calculations of what our spending will be. Those numbers are marginally different than that which is provided by the PBO, but I would offer that clarification. I also would say that when we came forward with our defense policy update, our No Strong and Free, in April of this year, it coincided with the subsequent release of our budget, which did provide a spending target up to 2029. But we acknowledged, as the Prime Minister did when we went to the NATO summit, that Canada must reach the 2% target and will reach the 2% target by 2032. I have been able to provide.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Marshall?
Yes, thank you very much, Minister, but you didn't give me the answer, and you still have to give us the details as to how you're going to get to the 2%. But I do want to say that, you know, your department has been challenged to deliver on the 2017 defense policy. It has a history, your department has a history of lapse funding, delays in delivering capital projects on time and on budget. And in fact, between 2017 and 2023, your department spent $12 billion less on capital projects compared to what was planned under your 2017 defense policy. Hence the reason why I'm asking you for your plan, your detailed plan to reach the 2%. I'd like to know what changed.
Mr. Minister?
Yeah, thank you very much. And these are important questions, and I want to acknowledge its importance. One of the challenges that the Department of National Defence has faced, along with the Canadian Armed Forces, is our procurement processes. And we acknowledge that those procurements have taken a long time. There are many reasons for that. We've done a very deep dive on how we can more expedite those important capital acquisitions. I think there's been some very important work done. And I'll just say, as an example, just in the last year and a half, we've now signed contracts for over 200 new aircraft, including the P-8s, the F-35s, new training aircraft. We've also signed contracts, and we're in the process of negotiating a construction contract for the building of our new River-class destroyers with the Irving shipyard. We're delivering next month. We're going to put in the water the first JSS support ships.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister. Senator Platt.
Minister, I also want to ask you about the Prime Minister's claim that your government expects to reach the NATO 2% of GDP spending by 2032. As Senator Marshall pointed out, and she's much politer than I am, Minister, you know that, Your own defense policy update and the parliamentary budget officer make it clear that there is no way that your government will fulfill your commitment to reach that 2% target. Minister, did the Prime Minister just try to fool our allies with this fake commitment, or is he just incompetent and thinks that defense budgets also balance themselves?
Well, let me agree with one point, sir. You are much less polite. But unfortunately, you're also wrong. And if I may, the report that was published in April articulated our plan over the next 5 years, but it also includes significant new spending, $73 billion over 20 years. But almost immediately, we recognized that that does not get us to their 2% commitment. And so a decision was made and announced by the Prime Minister. It's not just our expectation, it's our commitment to reach 2% of our GDP spending by 2032. I have been working very hard since then. Like, for example, in our budget, there was no mention of purchasing submarines in April. The Prime Minister committed to the purchase of 12 new conventional class submarines in July. In September, we put an RFI out into the market. We're moving very quickly to get that, because that's a capability that our Navy needs and that our allies expect us to do. There are a number of other very significant investments that are indicated in the defense policy that are now being worked on very actively, and, for example, integrated air and missile defense, new infrastructure to support our armed forces, and perhaps I'll get an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to speak a little later about the reconstitution plans that our CDS and Deputy Minister have brought forward, which are going to enable us to get the people we're going to need to put on those ships, to maintain and fly those planes, and to do the important job that CAF does.
Thank you. Senator Platt.
Spend, 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 and let Pierre Poilievre figure out a way to pay for it. The Prime Minister made the 2% commitment at the NATO summit to get out of an embarrassing situation. We all know that. Our allies were upset, losing patience with your government. That's why he made the commitment without any credible plan to get there. Minister, what will you tell the new Trump administration about your phony commitment when they come into office in January, if in fact you're still in government then? And do you have any concern that Canada will be kicked out of NATO? Minister Blair.
I might remind the new administration that in 2013, when then-President Harper committed to 2%, that same year he cut the defense budget by $2.5 billion, reducing it for the first and only time in Canadian history below 1% of our GDP. I will also tell you, Canada is an important and respected member of NATO, and I have just recently met a week ago with the Supreme Allied Commander Europe and articulated our plan to make sure that we deliver on the capabilities that NATO requires of us. We're going to get the job done. It's our commitment, and we're going to live up to it.